The actor is the blood and the breath and the tears and the sweat that the audience is connected to. If they don't have that, there's nothing. I mean, you can read it and you get something out of that, out of your own imagination of the reader, but that's not the same as it right there in front of you as it's human. It's happening. It's sensory. It makes sounds. It has a smell. It moves. It's time, space. It's rhythms. It's everything. When we talk about realism or naturalism, for the modern actor, particularly film and television, but theater too, we have a bit of a problem because how do people understand that? A lot of directors, particularly TV directors, um, ask you to do less. Don't do so much. Do nothing. Just be yourself. Just nothing. Practically nothing. And even to the point in American television, it got to be where everybody whispered the lines like that, almost consistently. Um, but that's not real. People are expressive in life, most people. And it's their particular brand of expressiveness that makes them interesting. And yet, you want it to be real. So let's make a kind of definition here. This style of doing less and being minimal, let's call that naturalism. It has the appearance of being natural. That doesn't mean it's real. So let's call what we want realism, which is organic. It is really talking, it is really moving, it is really behaving on your real impulse all the time. Naturalism is a style that looks like realism a bit, but isn't. And this is a problem. And if you go back and with the method, and a lot of people want to train in the method because they think it's going to make them real or natural, whatever it is they think they want. Uh, the idea of the method wasn't to be just natural, it was to be full, expressively, to be real. And this was approached in different ways by different masters of it. So you had Strasberg, who emphasized the internal work, particularly sense memory. You had Meisner, who emphasized the exchange between people here and now and how that affects you, so that if the other person says something differently or does something differently on this take than on the next take, I will respond differently. It won't be the same. Um, and there was also the idea of how to make the actor important, the charisma, the size, the greatness. The exemplar of that was Marlon Brando. And it's a great example because nobody was more real than Marlon Brando when he was at his best. He was completely organic. And yet there's something about his performances that have an enormous size to them, an enormous scope, an enormous importance. So he had everything. He responded in the moment like a great Meisner actor. He was extremely internal as a Strasberg, and then like Stella Adler, who was really mostly his teacher, she insisted on the greatness, the size, the power, and he certainly had that. He had all those things going simultaneously. It was a shock when he appeared in film the first few times. People were not ready for that. A lot of old style actors said it was they were going to ruin the profession, because one never knew what he was going to do next. Other actors had this quality: Montgomery Clift, James Dean, Geraldine Page, and it revolutionized American acting. And remember, he started, and really all of them started on the stage. So it also revolutionized the theater. Um, but American theater has always had a kind of second string British quality to it. They even invented an accent that they call mid-Atlantic, which when you think about it is extremely ridiculous. There's no one in the mid-Atlantic there's nobody that speaks that way, only some fish, There's just ocean there. It's not how the British speak and it's not how Americans speak. So what is that? Well, it's our way of being classical. Well, it's not as good as the British way of being classical because that's what they really have. They really have that. So, of course, they're going to do that better. It doesn't mean the Americans can't do it as well or better. It just means we have to do it in a way either to become British, if you're doing most of Shakespeare, for instance, or Bernard Shaw, or Noel Coward, or you can be American, but you better find your own way of doing it that's authentic, absolutely authentic, and it will work. For instance, the best Shakespeare actors today are not British, they're from the Caribbean. They have the voices for it, whether they're French Caribbean, Spanish Caribbean, or English Caribbean from Jamaica. They actually understand what the speech is in Shakespeare much better than the British do. The British try to make it now more American, like they think they're going to be more natural. But that's not what Shakespeare intended. It has to be real, but it has to be really a prince, for instance, from Denmark in the Middle Ages. That's different than some guy on the street, talking about sports or something. It's a different thing. So you have to find both. That's the thing, is people want to find one or the other. No. You want to find both simultaneously in the same person and train in that so much that you are that character. What I take to mean understanding is there's got to be a better word for that, because it's not mental understanding so much as it is understanding in a more physical way, a sensory way, a way of the spirit, a way of feeling in every part of your body and being what this person is, who this person is, and particularly under the given circumstances. This is what's important. And of course, you'll never get 100% of that either, except you will at certain moments, which is where we get what people might call a magic moment in your acting. At least Strasberg called it the psychological moment. There's all sorts of terms for it. The eureka moment. That's when everything just comes together in a subconscious way, and you're so relaxed, you don't have filters stopping it. It just boom comes out, and it's like surprising to you as well, to the actor as well, and it's fantastic. And it's that moment that won you the Academy Award and all of that. And the thing is, most at least decent actors experience this at some point or another. And the better the actor, the more you experience that, of course. You cannot experience it 100% of the time. It would be very rare. Even if you could, it would probably kill you, literally. But even if you could, your audience would be like, it's enough, stop hitting me, right? Like anything else, the high points of something have to be spaced out. You can't have them constantly hitting you, or nothing means anything anymore. But that's to go to what this word we don't really have for understanding in a more of a artistic way, a way that connects everything in our physical, sensory, spiritual beings, emotional beings, is. And how do you get that? How do you find that? Well, doing all the work we always talk about as good method actors, and then beyond that, in building character, And then you have to find in yourself, it's almost like a rhythm. It's almost Stanislavski talks about tempo rhythm. It's very hard to understand what he means. So people say, okay, there's a rhythm to the scene, da 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 da, and then it shifts over here. And I don't think that's really exactly what there's some truth in that. But I don't think that's exactly what he means. He means that there is if you look at through line, when he talks about through line, that it's like a lot of strings that are carrying every aspect of the character and their situation in time through as the scene builds and builds and falls and builds. And all of this is more things are getting added to it. It's like a seaweed in a wave where more mollusks are getting caught up in it. Everything's coming together in it. This is what, and if you continue that, if you let that accumulate, it becomes this enormous wave of fullness in the character, and you're practically unconscious at that point. You're not telling yourself what to do. It's just happening, 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 and anything can happen. And the golden moment arrives, and so forth. And to do that, we make the mistake of thinking we have to understand everything. You don't. You have to practice enough being the character in as many aspects of the character's life, and that's everything, physical, sensory, experiential, everything, so that maybe you filled in 2% of the life. That's a lot, actually. But it's enough. It hits critical mass, is the English expression. Business people call that the tipping point. You know, you get, I always think of those early Pac-Man games when you get past the first level, suddenly you get all these extras. Well, that's, you know, right? So that's what it's like. It's like when you build and build and build, and it's hard, and you work hard and you work hard, but it's not there yet, and you build and build, and then suddenly you start to feel connected, and then you go a little unconscious, and you're relaxed enough, and you're not thinking about it, and boom, 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 boom. You get a lot of them from the acting gods. Just come in and give them to you. Well, it wasn't just a gift. You earned it, actually. It's just that suddenly it comes all at once. You hit the tipping point. You hit the what did I call it before? That point at which whatever percentage of the character you got brings you the whole thing. Brings you the whole thing. Because you don't even know why. That's why I say understanding is not quite the right word. You don't know why, but it's all coming out of you. It's all being expressed at the level that character would express it. It's a happening. And you are fully engaged as the character. And it's magic. It is freaking magic when that happens. And it is what makes being a performing artist worthwhile. That's what we live for, any real artist. It's exactly that we go, wow, that's the best high I ever had. And even better is everybody on the stage or the film set is in that too. Simultaneously, there's no bigger high in the world. I mean, there's equal highs. I'm sure, you know, the 1990s Lakers basketball, you know, Kareem and Magic and Nixon and Wilkes and all those people, they were like that. They were like, if you're a basketball fan, they were like fucking constantly like that. You're all, how could they be so together? So each one of them was magic moments, and they're all magic at the same time. Oh my God. You know, it's actually a little easier to see in athletics, but in art, when a play, for instance, or something like that, when it happens, the audience has never seen that. They've seen individual good performances, but they haven't seen that very often. When everything is happening with it, that they just are like, oh, that's why we go to the theater. That tells us everything about what it is to be human. That's the biggest gift we can give. The relaxation, once you practice it, enables you to speak and move out of almost any state of being, no matter how angry you get or how much you're laughing or how much, right? It's really quite extraordinary what you can do. And actually, human beings do that in life. They do. And it's sometimes incredibly moving to watch normal human beings do that. Yeah. And it's all with a base of relaxation. It's basic, absolutely basic. Without it, you're not an actor. Relaxation for the actor, any performer really, but especially the actor, is absolutely mandatory. If you don't have great relaxation in your body, you have nothing, because the impulses of the character cannot be expressed in a real way. They're being blocked by your tension. Somebody says, yeah, but isn't the character, maybe the character has tension. Yeah, but that's the character's tension. That's not the actor's tension. That's not the actor's tension. Think of it like a blank canvas that a painter's going to paint on. That's what you need. You need your physical being to be a blank canvas. Then you can paint on the character's tension. That's fine. But not your general tension. It just gets in the way of any real impulse. So, now, actors and theater people have recognized for, forever really, that this principle that the performer has to be relaxed, extraordinarily relaxed. And that's not a relaxation that means you're asleep or you're slumping over. That's not what I mean. It's the martial artists know how to do this. If you're a gung fu or a karate or whatever it is, taekwondo, they have a perfect sense of relaxation, even though they're ready to go into action at any moment. And even when they go into action, the good ones, they only use what they need to. They don't do anything extra. The best ones don't do anything extra at all. Just the amount of tension they need and no more. Period. Dancers too, same thing. For the actor, how do you relax? There's many ways. I mean, the golden age of British acting in the 60s, 70s, even into the 80s, with Peter O'Toole and Richard Burton and Richard Harris and Glenda Jackson and Susanna York and people like that. The problem was that they achieved, not all of them, but almost all of them, they achieved their I don't think Glenda Jackson, but all the rest, they achieved their relaxation by drinking alcohol all the time, really drinking alcohol. They were all alcoholics. And yeah, it kind of worked for them. Most of them, they died in their 50s or 60s, but and Peter O'Toole, apparently, who was one of the greatest actors in the English-speaking world, but by the time he was in his 50s and he'd be on stage, he was like he'd be brilliant one moment, the next moment he'd be like, he didn't even know his lines, he didn't know where he was because the alcohol had damaged his brain so much. This is not really the way to do it. And by the way, marijuana doesn't work as well as alcohol for that. Marijuana makes it hard to concentrate enough, and so you're struggling just to stay in the play. It's not fun. Believe me, I tried it once. It's not fun. It doesn't work. For rehearsal, once in a while, it's okay to get some weird ideas, but that's about it. Not for performance. I don't recommend taking any drugs at all. It's all, you can produce any state of being you want with sense memory. You could feel as drunk as you want, as high as you want, as feverish as you want, as energetic as you want, connected in any way you want physically. That's the beauty of sense memory. You don't need an artificial drug or stimulus. You can do it all yourself. But And to do that, you also need a profound sense of relaxation in your body. Now, Strasberg developed a kind of relaxation which sort of worked pretty well, where he'd have you just flop in a chair and do things with your arms and your legs and this sort of thing, and your head, neck. And it was very general, though. But because he was Strasberg, you know, for 40 or 50 years, people really did that. Method actors did it. And they thought that was it. But, you know, I came of age in a time when kinesthesiology became a big thing. And people who moved for a living, people who were dancers, acrobats, actors, gymnasts, all sorts of people like that, clowns even, you know, they were beginning to pay attention to the scientific findings about the human body, about musculature and skeletal stuff, and how everything works together in movement dynamically, and about, in particular with dancers, that they were tired of being injured all the time. And so they went to various forms of kinesthesiology and all these methods that were developed, like Feldenkrais and other things, to say, is there a way of really getting stretched and strong and doing all these things that we have to do and not hurt ourselves? And there was a famous choreographer named Alwyn Nicolai, who was famous for being really the first major choreographer to use video as part of his performances. But then he was also famous for researching and developing a technique of exercise for his dancers that did not hurt the body. It was called Nicolai technique, and his dancers were trained this way. And it did turn out that they were the least injured of major dance company dancers. And it became kind of a rage, and then other companies started developing variations of it. And a lot of these things came together. And in my time of training, I did some Nicolai, and I did some Alvin Ailey, and who were great with particularly the chest and certain parts of the body. Nobody better at this isolations, and didn't hurt you. Even Martha Graham with her opening up thing turned out to be a kind of emotional button for us actors, and we incorporated some of that. And then gymnast training called Caruso, a famous gym teacher who a lot of actors in Hollywood were using. And other things. And of course, the Strasberg base technique of a relaxation. And it took me like 7 years to develop a head-to-toe program also involved in breathing as a big part of it, based on Grotowski, the Polish director and theorist. There's a lot of elements that came into this. And that I stole from a lot of different techniques to make this relaxation that takes like an hour or hour and 15 minutes the first time you do it. And then you can whittle it down to like 20 minutes after a while. You can even add, after you're good at it, you can add your own things or subtract things. You can make it your own. I don't recommend doing that right away. You need to know the rules before you break them, because there's a reason for everything and why everything leads into the next thing. Some of it's even fun, believe it or not. It's not as strenuous as a typical dance class warm-up, but there's some parts of it that are a bit strenuous, not too bad. And it does seem to, when people report, they really feel they're not blocking impulses. They're expressive from more parts of their body, more holistically, and it works for me, but it seems to also work for my actors when I train them in it. And if you do it for 6 months, like every day, it trains your body, it trains your being, your instrument, so that you don't have to think about it. You have to still do it, but you don't have to, when you're acting, you don't have to think about it. Oh, relax. No, it's automatic. It becomes the wisdom of your body will automatically do these things. It'll also improve your breathing, and you're breathing through tension, you're breathing through emotion, which is very important. I mean, because one thing that I encounter as an instructor all the time is an actor gets very emotional and they can't get the lines out and they can't do the physical actions because they're so overwhelmed with the emotion. Well, you see, because actors think, particularly young actors, oh, to get that big emotion where I'm sobbing, crying, or laughing hysterically, or so angry, or whatever it is what I want. That's what I want to get. And so they get it. And they can't talk and they can't move. So if you're playing Medea, who definitely is going to get really emotional, you have to say these amazing lines, and a lot of them, till the play's over. Sense memory is a really important tool. Don't get me wrong, there are actors who never even heard of sense memory, or they've heard of it and don't really know what it is, and they can be quite good actors. So they probably, if they're really, really good, they're using sense memory to some degree without realizing it. Sense memory is obviously the memory of the senses, and what that can give you is all kinds of states of being, emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, so that your body and your mind and your spirit and your emotions achieve a certain condition, and these are triggered by experiences you've had with your senses in your life or in your character's life. And that's a whole complex subject, but we'll just talk about your own life for a while. You have sense memories every day. Every human being does. Every animal does. Nature developed them in us as a survival technique. If something looks a pretty red, glowing color and you're a child and you touch it, the top of the stove, of an electric stove that's red, it burns you. Well, it hurts. You scream, you cry. Next time you get near it, it may still look pretty, but you're not going to touch it because you have a sense memory of that burn. Or what happens to us in life, if you're lost in the forest and you start getting thirsty on a warm afternoon, it's true, they've studied this. Your sense of smell for water gets stronger. It actually gets stronger. So you can, if you relax a little bit and really use your nose, you can smell if there's a stream nearby or some source of water. And that has actually saved many people's lives. So that's sense memory, the memory of the smell of water. And your whole system is actually helping you to get that functioning when you're in trouble. If you pass somebody on the street who reminds you of the lover you had 5 years ago, what happens to you? You're having sense memories all over the place, all sorts of feelings of love, ecstasy, hate, regret, whatever it is. And it affects you physically, it affects you emotionally. Just touching something, if I touch thick wool, okay, I feel the thick wool, but I also hear a snowstorm and I smell the crisp air and I smell a wood fire from somebody's chimney in the mountains, and I feel athletic because I feel like skiing and all of that. Those are all sense memories. So they actually put me in those conditions if I train in them. You have to train, of course. But when you train in them, they're actually very useful in acting. I mean, very useful. That you can change the way you feel as much as you want, and you can feel these things pretty strongly, or just on a more subtle level that influences you and puts you in a good mood or a slightly bad mood or a this mood or a that mood, and they can change and flow through the scene. And often you can have 5 going at the same time. As we do in life, we have at least 5 different conditions going on with us at once, and we don't even realize it. Well, that just makes you so much more real and so much more connected to your environment. And the world of the character. So this is why I get pretty obsessive about sense memory. It also helps you with getting quite emotional and really connecting to more real emotion, not just produced emotion, because you're an experienced actor and you can produce some emotions, but they're not very real for the character. You're just faking it. And you're not exactly faking it. You feel it, but you're not connected to it so much. A lot of actors do that, but if with sense memory, you're actually more experiencing it like you would in the character's life. It's actually happening. And that's very exciting to work with, because suddenly the lines make sense. Suddenly what you're saying sounds like it's coming from you, and you are the character. You're it. It's you and you're it, and it's coming out of your mouth and your body. And this is exciting. This is why it's such a great tool. Again, it's a tool. It's not, some people get so obsessed with it, they make it the art. It's not the art, it's the tool, it's the hammer. That hammers the nail. And that's but what a hammer, it's great. It's a great tool. And that's why in my workshops I teach it. You do it every morning. Hopefully you're going to continue to do it until it becomes second nature to you. Then you get them for free after a while. You read a script and you start feeling sense memories happen to you. You don't even know where they came from. You develop a sense memory central somewhere up there in your brain, and it just starts doing it on its own. And it's almost always right. It gives you what you need. It's more intuitive. It's not so conscious, it's subconscious. But the subconscious is much more experiential about these things, much more correct about what you really feel, not what you're supposed to feel or what the writer or the director say you're supposed to feel, but what the character really feels, which is often quite different and more interesting.